Well, it's that time of year again. It looks like we're pretty much at the end of 2021. Now, I thought now would probably be a good time to do a bit of a retrospective of what this year has been for Oldschool Runescape. Players have been pretty vocal about the lack of content this year, but today I thought it would be interesting to look back at all of the updates this year and see really how successful or unsuccessful this year really was. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, I always appreciate a like and it helps out a ton, and let's get started. Now, before I jump into today's video, I want to thank Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring today's video. Raid Shadow Legends is one of the biggest fantasy RPGs for your phone. In Raid, you can collect and control over 600 unique champions and fight a huge roster of epic bosses. Actually, this month, Raid has released a brand new boss, the Hydra. And no, not that Hydra. The Hydra comes with 4 heads and each has a different mechanic. For example, it can cloak itself in a veil of poison, you can fear your champions, and even rot them from the inside. This is by far one of the toughest new challenges in Raid, but will provide you with some of the best rewards. Raid honestly has such a massive variety of champions, and one of my favorites is Varl the Destroyer because I think he's holding his sword backwards, but he doesn't care. I like that. I also really like Aox for having a S-tier jowl. This month, Raid is also going to be giving away a limited edition champion to everyone in game. This champion is based off the esports legend and Navi superstar Simple. If you play Raid between now and January 28th, Simple's limited edition champion is available for free. So if you want to give Raid a try, you should use the link in my description as you will get an epic hero, Verghese, 200,000 silver, 1 experience boost, 1 energy refill, and an ancient shard. These will be available for 30 days for new players. And thanks once again to Raid for sponsoring today's video. Alright, so jumping back to the very beginning of this year, the very first major update we got of 2021 was the Soul Wars update. Now, this essentially was just a backport of Soul Wars from RS2, but with a few minor changes to both how the game played, and more notably to the rewards that it provided. Now, Soul Wars came with a few new rewards, including a new item called the Ectoplasmator, which would give you prayer experience whenever you killed ghostly creatures. There was a new pet, and notably a new area where you could imbue your items. Previously, the only way to do that was through Nightmare Zone, but now you can do it at Soul Wars. I gotta be honest, I don't think I played Soul Wars once since it came out. I never played it back in RS2, so I haven't had a huge incentive to do it. Now, a few weeks later, they released the Isles of Souls, which is a bit of an expansion to Soul Wars, and it released an absolutely gigantic island called the Isle of Souls. There are a lot of interesting things on this island, mainly catering to Iron Man. I do wish the island, though, was a little bit smaller. Coming a bit later in January, we had the Shades of Morton rework. I actually really liked this rework. The whole underground catacombs got reworked to make it a lot more streamlined, and just visually, I think it's a lot nicer. Now with it, they added in new content such as new shades to kill, those being the Urium shades, as well as the loot table on the reward chest being entirely reworked to make it much more lucrative to open, as well as providing some new rewards such as new prayer robes, swamp bark, and blood bark armor, and you can even get a wearable coffin from the activity. Overall, the activity does still keep its core identity, but as it had been heavily reworked, it almost feels like new content, which I personally really enjoyed. Now moving on to February, one of the bigger updates of the month wasn't really an update to the main game itself, but on February 24th, Oldschool Runescape released on Steam. Now this was huge news and I was really excited at the time. Now in retrospect, not many people actually use the Steam client. Looking up the player counts for that, usually it's around 1,500 at its peak, so I wouldn't really call it a failure exactly, but we're also not breaking any numbers and popping into top 100 lists or anything like that. I think overall it was a good idea, but unfortunately RuneLite is so enticing, and with the addition of 117's HD plugin, there's just so many reasons to use RuneLite, and clearly most people do. Now on March 17th, we received Shooting Stars. Now I really like the idea of Shooting Stars, and I remember having a lot of fun chasing them around back in RS2, but I have to say I have not ran into many Shooting Stars this year. I think only 1 or 2. I haven't actively been looking, but as a distraction and diversion, well, it hasn't distracted me too much this year. Now the idea of Shooting Stars is you can locate them with a telescope that you can install in your POH, When you find them on the ground, a bunch of people will eventually flock to it and start mining up Stardust. It's a moderately slow but AFK way of training your mining, and the Stardust can be used to purchase a few new rewards, including a Prospector outfit recolor, and more notably, the Celestial Ring. Now, March 24th, we received Temporos. Temporos is actually probably one of my favorite updates of the year. It's a skilling boss for fishing and offers fairly competitive fishing experience while being a lot more fun than conventional training methods. You can start participating in Temporos at level 35 fishing and provides decent experience at that level while being a fairly fun group activity. Temporos also provides a large variety of different rewards, including raw fish, planks, jewelry items, and some new rewards as well, including the new fish barrel, the tackle box, and the Tome of Water. Oh yeah, and the pet recolor, which I actually ended up getting this year. Now, starting us off in April, we had actually one of the biggest free-to-play updates of the last 8 years, and that was Below Ice Mountain. This is a brand new quest for free-to-play that offers a introductory new area for free-to-play players. The Ruins of Camdozel offers quite a few different training methods for free-to-play, including a new fishing and cooking method, a new prayer training method, a new mining method, and even marginally a new runecrafting method. It is an interconnected dungeon that offers a self-contained gameplay loop that feels very fun, especially for free-to-play. As you spend more time in the dungeon, you can unlock area of effect buffs and slowly increase your experience rates. And once you've really explored everything there is to offer there, you can even unlock one of the more powerful free-to-play weapons, the Baronite Mace. I would actually really love to see an expansion to here someday, and I know they do have some plans to do that, so I'd love to see it. Alright, so April 21st, we have a very important update, and no, it's not the fishing trawler improvements. Now, equipment rebalance is something that has been talked about for a long time, but starting in 2020, they started finally putting out some information and some plans to make some drastic changes to existing equipment. Now, because of how controversial and divisive this update was, they ended up splitting the equipment rebalance into a bunch of different parts. Now, on April 21st, we only got one part of the equipment rebalance, mainly the less controversial parts, such as rebalancing how med helms work to make them a viable ranged helm. Most basic armor, such as plate legs, plate bodies, full helms, square shields, and kite shields received minor changes. And notably, spears, warhammers, and maces had their attack speed increased to make them a viable alternative to a scimitar. Now, for members, the Twisted Bow received a minor nerf, stripping it of its prayer bonus, and of course a few other minor changes as well. Looking back at this, I really forgot how long it took for us to get all of the equipment rebalancing changes. It essentially took nearly the entire year and over 4 months to get just the first part of it. Now, updates for May were kind of sparse, but we did get one major infrastructure change, and that was the launch of the clans system. In hindsight, this update is probably going to be integral for future updates, so I'm happy we got it, and there are a lot of benefits to the new clan system. I really love the loot drop notifications and level notifications. Those really make your clan feel like more of a community. The clan hall is a very fun idea. I do wish it was more fleshed out and there's more to do in your clan hall. In the end, this entire update is going to pay dividends, I think, in years to come, especially with it being required for Group Ironman. Now, starting us off in June, on June 3rd, we got new modes for the Theater of Blood. We got a story mode and a hard mode. Now, the story mode, it did turn out they forgot the story part of that, and it took about a month and a half to get the actual story added in there. In the end, though, it's just a moderately changed version of Theater of Blood. Not too much really to talk about here. Now, June 16th, we get what arguably might be the biggest content update of the year, and that is A Kingdom Divided. There are probably other changes people would argue as being more impactful, but Kingdom Divided added in the most new content out of most of the updates in 2021. It came with a new quest, which I gotta say was amazing. If you haven't done A Kingdom Divided, it is an excellent quest, and in hindsight, the rewards are actually quite strong. Now, once you complete A Kingdom Divided, you get access to the new reworked Arceus spellbook, and in hindsight, there are quite a few powerful spells on it. The new Summon the Thralls are used religiously at most PvM bosses because it's just free DPS, and the utility from the Demonic Offering spells, Sinister Offering, Shadow Step. Honestly, I would say half of them have either a pretty powerful or niche use. The update added in new options for the game and new ways to train and experience Gielinor, and I think that really makes it a success. Now, June 30th is actually a pretty big day. Not only did we get a new hard mode for the nightmare called Vistani's Nightmare, we also received a large part of the equipment rebalance. I actually find it so funny that equipment rebalance isn't even in the title for this update. They kind of just shoved it down at the bottom and maybe hoped nobody scrolled that far down. Now, June 30th, we received a brand new ranged weapon, the Bow of Verdinin, which is added in to fill in the new gap that is going to be created by the blowpipe nerf on the exact same day. Now, nerfing the blowpipe was probably one of the biggest changes of the year. Now, looking back in retrospect, I'm pretty happy that they went ahead with it. I do still find myself using the blowpipe often, but not all the time like I essentially would before. Now, on top of nerfing the blowpipe, the armored crossbow received a change, the crystal bow received a change, the Dragon Hunter crossbow got nerfed a bit, and the ranged offhands received fairly significant buffs. And in the end, the ranged section of the equipment rebalance was handled today, and that was arguably one of the more controversial parts of the entire update. Now, on July 21st, we received combat achievements, something that I personally have enjoyed quite a bit, and I even made a hardcore Ironman based on the combat achievements. In the end, I still feel like I wish there was a bit more of an incentive to actually do them. With next coming out, maybe there will be to some extent, and maybe in the future they will tag on more rewards, but right now it's essentially for a very cool looking cosmetic item and a bit of quality of life surrounding the God Wars dungeon. It would kind of be nice to beef it up a bit, but I still have had a lot of fun going for all of the achievements. Now, around now is really when the main game updates started to come to a crawl. There are still a number of updates that came out in this time, but most of them not to the main game. For example, on August 26th, we received Deadman Reborn, and although I don't play Deadman mode, I did hop on here to look at the new sigils and try flipping in Deadman mode. I had a lot of fun playing it, I'm not gonna lie. And overall, I thought this season was pretty entertaining, although the final tournament obviously had some issues, and that's not even fully resolved yet. But I thought the Deadman sigils were a really fun idea, so if they do end up running Deadman mode ever again, I do hope they maybe bring back the sigils. Now, with the summer all but done, we are jumping into September here with not a game update, but probably one of the biggest events of the year. 1.17's plugin is told to shut down on September 7th. Now, this sparked one of the larger community backlashes, and within a week, Jagex had reversed their decision. 1.17's HD plugin is allowed to release, and officially it comes out on September 13th. Probably up there for one of my top updates of this year, even though it's a community project and not officially created by Jagex, but still, I gotta say, probably one of my favorite updates, and I can't believe it that finally in 2021 we got an officially endorsed HD client for Oldschool Runescape. If this actually ended up being shut down, I think it would have been game over for any more attempts, but thankfully, due to all the pushback, Oldschool Runescape is in HD. Now, coming a little bit later in the month on September 22nd, we got the update that I personally thought was already in the game. So on September 22nd, we got one of the last parts of the equipment rebalance. That would be to Black Dehyde, among a few other things. At this point, it had been a few months since the major blowpipe nerf, and I just kind of thought Dehyde had already been changed, but, well, it hadn't. So in this rebalance update, they nerfed pretty much all Dehyde across the board, Black Dehyde being the most notable, but all of the rest of them also had their stats compressed as well. There was also a significant change to the Din's Bulwark to give it a new ability that would allow it to scale based on your defensive bonus, which means you're now able to be an effective mega tank and still deal a fair bit of damage. Personally, I don't really know how this has affected PvP. That's not really my area to say, but personally, from a PVM perspective, I really like the idea of the new Din's Bulwark. I think it has a really cool new identity, and it gave a kind of strong, albeit maybe niche use to the Din's Bulwark, an item that pretty much nobody had used for any actual bossing in years. So moving on to October here, on the 6th, we got one of the other bigger updates of the year, Group Ironman. Now behind the scenes, I think Group Ironman might have been the biggest update of the year as far as technical requirements and the infrastructure investment that was made to make it happen. The release was fairly polished, albeit missing potentially a few important features that a lot of people wanted. I think the only real issue with the release is how it kind of fit in with other content updates around that time. The last new piece of main game content might actually be A Kingdom Divided, which is multiple months earlier, so I think it just fell in at an awkward time. Personally, I really like the idea of Group Ironman. Maybe someday I'll play it, and I'm glad people are enjoying it. And I think the only real reason that players had issue with it at all is simply how it affected other updates. I mean, right after the release, Leagues has announced that it's going to be delayed. And in hindsight here, we didn't really get any other main game content for the rest of the year. Obviously, some things, but no big beats, nothing majorly new. So coming up to the recent times here, October 27th, we get the Revenant Cave changes, or at least most of them. This involved reworking the Revenant to have a more lucrative drop table, to have them spawn more often, and to streamline the process of killing Revenants to make it an actually viable wilderness method again. Now again, this is a PvP, so I can't really give a strong opinion on it, but there are certainly more people in the Revenant Caves now than there were before. So December 9th, we get a big update, at least, well, in my opinion. We get the GE tax and the gold sync. Another one of those massive updates, but doesn't really have much to show on paper. The Grand Exchange tax is going to have large implications long term, but isn't really like spicy new content that you can sink your teeth into exactly. Along with the GE tax, you received a whole host of gold syncs, including new purchasable bank space, a new virtual coffer that is going to be syncing items with the Ground Exchange tax money, and a literal gold sink. We don't really have the knowledge of hindsight yet, but I am really excited to look at the future of the economy and maybe look back in another year to see how this all shakes out. And finally here, December 16th, we have the Christmas event. Now this might not necessarily be the last update of the year, because after today I'm off for the Christmas holidays and I probably won't be back until January. Now looking back at 2021, I would say the first half of the year had more content, at least that appealed to me. In my opinion, there was just more going on to get excited about and to actually go experience in the game. The latter half of the year really felt like it focused more on the temporary game modes such as Deadman, Leagues, although it was delayed, and even Group Ironman. That said, a lot of people enjoy those updates, so that's of course just from my opinion, but it did feel like the last half of the year was a little lackluster as far as content updates. So in the end, we got quite a few new skilling methods, one big new quest, a huge rebalance to our equipment system, a new clan system that forged the Group Ironman game mode, and some new spins on existing bosses. In the end, I'd say it was a pretty decent year, and I'm really looking forward to 2022. I think next year is going to be jam-packed, or at least that's what they say. So thanks for watching as always, guys, and I will see you next year. Now, before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to Alejandra, Sejuani's Flail, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier. Thank you so much as always, guys. Also, a giant thank you to Sir Rojas, Ryan Shady, Mexos, Base Titch, NDM001, and Yo-Yo Sub 89 for all being subscribed at the Runite tier. Appreciate it, guys. As always, if you are looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is a great way to support me directly. You'll get immortalized in all of my future videos, get a custom role in my Discord server, and you get access to my video release schedule as well. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.